We need to have a serious conversation, my friend. You're black-pilled. RFK Jr. is on national television red-pilling the boomers about seed oils, heavy metals, and extreme toxins that have been put into our food supply, and you're black-pilled. Spit it out. You have to realize that it will take some time and a lot of effort, but we're going to win. The fact is that we can tackle the metabolic health crisis that is destroying the United States from within. We can tackle the obesity epidemic, and we can save the country, but it comes down to the fact of people needing to be willing to do the work, not only on the personal front, but that of the political as well. And what we see here is RFK Jr. doing both in tandem, informing people that the FDA and many different agencies that are supposed to be responsible for making sure the products you're consuming are safe and healthy. Well, not only is it the fact that they are neither of those things, but also on top of it, these regulatory bodies are doing nothing more than the bidding of these massive institutions that are making you incredibly ill. And of course, then you being incredibly sick from the metabolic cavalcade of destruction that has hit your body because of the nonsense that you are consuming on repeat, then leads you into the hands of the pharmaceutical industrial lobby. Isn't that just remarkable? The things that are being advertised on mainstream television when it comes to the fact of the unhealthy junk food, as well as the fact of the medication from these pharmaceutical industries that are being produced to make sure we can counter these issues that are created from the metabolic health crisis that is visited upon the United States because of the food you're consuming that is so consistently advertised to you. You need to spit out the black pill and realize while it is an uphill battle, this was always going to be one. So you may as well act as Sisyphus and put that boulder upon your shoulder and attempt to push it up the hill at every single turn. Now let's go ahead, jump in, and throw it over to RFK Jr. exposing seed oils and toxic substances in your food.
Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting, the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick, and then in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing?
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
You know, a big item that, and by the way, it's getting very expensive, are cereals. Why is the food coloring in particular bad?
Food coloring, you see here yellow food coloring, that is a petroleum product. Mm-hmm. It's associated with really, with depression. It's associated with autoimmune injuries and ADHD.
Yeah.
These, and red dye also is very bad. In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to process foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency, the USDA, the FDA, have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. and they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Yeah, I want to talk about pesticides, and then let's talk about the policy. So let's talk about the pesticides and the things that worry you about. I mean, this looks like fresh food, right? What should I be worried about here?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is, like, for example, my wife loves kale, and she had the impression that kale is actually good for you. If it's organic, it's very good for you, but most kale and strawberries, for example, grapes, are contaminated with pesticides, and particularly the Environmental Working Group has found what they call the dirty dozen, some of the worst pesticides on these products. So, you know, I look at a strawberry and I think, oh, this is a healthy food,
Right.
but in most cases, unless it's organic, certified organic, you are getting something that's actually hurting you.
Remarkable job from Bobby Kennedy, doing the Lord's work, informing the older generation about the dangers of things like seed oils, ultra-processed and highly refined grains and sugars, the dyes that are going into so much of the different foods that are marketed to children, which means we are quite literally seeing poison be advertised to children. But no, that's not an issue for the government to tackle, for the FDA to talk about, nor for the media to address. What we can see is they'll just gladly skate by and do nothing more than pump out endless advertisements for these products, whether it be the pharmaceutical companies that are creating drugs to assist with your weight loss like Ozempic, or whether it be the companies that are creating these foods that are realistically tantamount to poison that you are consuming in mass that is creating this obesity epidemic that is assisting in your desire to take Ozempic. Isn't that just remarkable? So Bobby Kennedy specifically going on Fox News and talking about this is effectively nothing more than an arrow to the knee of the pharmaceutical industry itself, because by talking about this, what you're doing is tackling one of the main factors that creates one of their largest vectors for profit, which would be the metabolic health crisis in the United States. And if you're going to be doing this, then what you very well could be doing is diminishing the amount of money that they could be intaking in the future, which would absolutely be phenomenal. And the thing that I find so remarkable specifically about all of this is how this is tackled, or rather not so, within the media most times, because unless you have someone on like RFK Jr. that truly understands the dangers of what this presents, you'll never have a real conversation like this on the corporate press. Are you aware that the metabolic health crisis in the United States specifically has brought us to the point where roughly 1 in 2 children have fatty liver disease? Do you know what that is? Well, I'll let you know something real quick. Fatty liver disease was something that was only discovered in late-stage alcoholics through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But now, because of all of the endless garbage we see people consuming and that we are pumping children full of, it is now something that they are dealing with in mass. We are poisoning the children of this nation, and the only way to save the future of it is to stop doing so. Now let's go ahead and jump in here. What you see from the Cleveland Clinic, seed oils, are they actually toxic? Often found in ultra-processed foods, these oils can cause inflammation and diseases. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and cut to the end real quick. They are indeed toxic. And we've gone through this study numerous times on this channel, but one thing that we haven't gone over, which I find quite fascinating, which is also toxic and causes inflammation and disease, would be that of the color additives that are put into so many of the different foods that we see marketed to children. Jumping onto the FDA, color additives and questions and answers for consumers. Interesting that. Here you see, are color additives safe to eat? Yes, color additives are safe when they are used in accordance with the FDA regulations. When the FDA approves the use of a color additive in food, our regulations specify the types of food in which it can be used, any maximum amounts allowed to be used, and how the color additive should be identified on the food label. Okay, let's go ahead and touch on realistically the main one that matters here, any maximum amounts allowed to be used. And what that means is there's a specific threshold of what you should not be going past when it comes to your consumption of this product. But because we see people not only consuming 1 or 2, or maybe tripling or quadrupling down on the amount of the products that you're producing, they are then consuming, and not only this, doubling down by consuming other products that also have the same chemicals or similar, you would see that you are certainly surpassing that threshold. And that is exactly what you're seeing happen with things like seed oils, which are so calorically dense that is causing, well, the obesity crisis to skyrocket, because people are unintentionally consuming consuming so much of these calories through these hyper processed oils that they don't even realize it, and that is exactly why they're intaking so much food without understanding. Not only that, things like high fructose corn syrup hijacking your mental systems, and when I say that, I mean quite literally programming your brain to want more food because it's telling you to pack on more fat because winter is coming. That is one of the things that, of course, we don't talk about when it comes to things like high fructose corn syrup, but why would we? Alrighty, let's go ahead and move on from that tirade before I start talking about the issues of how we're effectively mimicking what bears do when it comes to their hibernation process, and that's just going to be a 10-minute rant, so let's just move on. Here we see from the American Heart Association, there's no reason to avoid seed oils and plenty of reasons to eat them. Interesting that. So yeah, the thing that I find so remarkable about all of this is when this came out. Published August 20th, 2024. Oh, you mean right when Bobby Kennedy came forward and started talking about things such as this on the corporate press, as well as talking about the issues of the metabolic health crisis that has befallen the United States. Now you feel it's so necessary to talk about things like this. Not only is it that RFK Jr. is talking about this, but the media, as in social media, is blowing up talking about natural fats that you should be consuming, which we'll be getting into in just a second. But the thing that I adore about this is how transparent this reveals things like the American Heart Association to be. They do not actually stand for what is best for you. They stand for whatever is desired by those who fund them, and we will be getting to that in just a second. Here you see from the American Heart Association, healthy cooking oils. Is that so? Here you see replacing bad fats, saturated and trans. Wow, I can't believe they would say trans anything is bad. Sorry, couldn't help it. With good fats, monounsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats is smart for your health. An easy way to do this is to choose non-typical vegetable oils to cook with and prepare food with. The types of oils are healthier choices than solid fats, which include butter, shortening, lard, and sticks of margarine. And the only healthy fats that I would actually include out of that list would be butter and lard because they are natural fats. Here you can see also, they're including palm oil and coconut oil, which I would include. Coconut oil is something that is okay to cook with as long as you don't push past 450 degrees, but palm oil is something that breaks down, oxidizes, and then releases free radicals, which are incredibly unhealthy for you, which can cause health ramifications, which I'm sure is something that is assisting in the metabolic health crisis that we are seeing. Here you see, when shopping for healthy oils, choose those with less than 4 grams of saturated fat per tablespoon and no partially hydrogenated oils or trans fats. So I'll give them a little bit of credit there. But here's the thing that I won't give them credit on, is the oils that they advocate for that are apparently great for you to use. And here you can see that list of oils that they have for you, saying here are some common cooking oils that contain more of the better for you fats and less saturated fat. Canola, corn, olive, peanut, safflower, soybean, sunflower, and vegetable, claiming that blends of combinations of these oils are often labeled vegetable oil, and cooking sprays made from these oils are also good choices. Some specialty oils, including avocado, grapeseed, rice bran, and sesame, can be healthy choices, but may cost a bit more or be harder to find. I will admit, I was quite surprised when I first saw that list of oils that they advocated for because I was like, dude, this is the American Heart Association. What's going on here? And then I started to look into where their funding comes from, and it all makes sense. Big pharma, big agriculture, big government, and of course, philanthropic individuals akin to that of Bill Gates. And when I see something like this, I'm never surprised that you're trying to sell me a false bill of goods. So what we can understand is that them telling you that these fats are better for you, well, in the end, if that is the case, fine. But what you should be doing at a minimum is looking at them with a skeptical eye, to say the least. And realistically, when it comes to the oils that they advocate for, I would only even advocate cooking with like 2 of them, and that would be olive and avocado, because their smoke point is roughly 450 degrees, and also they're natural fruit seed oils. But the thing is, even with oils such as this, if they get past a certain temperature threshold and get past their smoke point, they will then break down and release free radicals. So, what do we have then? We have the possibility of using things like natural fats, like animal fats, akin to that of, I don't know, lard, butter, beef tallow, and the like. But no, you see, those are dangerous, and they have too much saturated fat, and that's what's a problem. And you need to make sure you're consuming things like unsaturated fats like canola, corn, peanut, safflower, soybean, sunflower, and vegetable oil, because that's what's best for you. Absolutely insane. The fact is that you need to realize one reason things like this are advocated for so heavily would be this, that not only can they patent the process and the actual machinery itself, but the product, which means there is a litany of profit to be made here from an industry such as this. But you know what's a lot harder to profit? Something like natural fats, akin to, I don't know, butter, because you could just dump cream into a churn and agitate it to the point that it creates the butter that you would then use to cook with. But here's the deal. That's dangerous, you see. That thing that your ancestors were quite literally eating for the entirety of their existence, going back through all of the different generations that created you in this current era, that's bad for you. What's important that you consume is this hyper-processed garbage that we make, that we can make ridiculous amounts of profit off of. Oh, and then also we profit off of your illness because we're in conjunction with those massive institutions that are creating the medicines that we're selling you to assist with this metabolic health crisis that you're suffering from. Absolutely insane. Because realistically, when you actually look at the nutrient value in something like natural fats, it all starts to make sense why they would demonize something like this. Because they don't want you healthy. Here you can see nutrition facts for butter. Go ahead, pause the screen, read all of this. We're moving on. And the thing that I found most interesting about this specifically was the demonization of natural fats, because what you saw was, in the process of doing so, the government do what? Glorify sugar consumption, as was seen with that of the food pyramid, which also was sold on a lie. Jumping onto the Atlantic, more than half of what Americans eat is ultra-processed, and that means it's ultra-profitable. And those foods account for 90% of U.S. added sugar intake, new research says. Oh, what's that? We see ultra-processed food being majority of what Americans are consuming, and then 90% of U.S. added sugar intake is also involved with that ultra-processed food. Isn't that just remarkable once you have an understanding of this? Here you see from NPR, 50 years ago, sugar industry quietly paid scientists to point the blame at fat. That's right. It's not the fact of sugar and ultra-processed, highly refined grains that are creating this obesity epidemic and illness as you see it overtaking you so consistently and creating all of these litany of health issues. No, it must be fat. Unfucking real. Jumping on now to the American Heart Association, and this is the thing that tipped me off into looking at their funding. 20 million community-driven research funding aims to provide reduced inequities and improve health outcomes. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder the way that this is going to be tackled. I read through the entire thing. I was like, that's actually a reasonable approach. Now let's see why it is that you're so unreasonable in the things that you advocate for. And then I stumbled upon this. Here we see 2020 to 2021 American Heart Association funding from pharmaceutical and biotech companies and device manufacturers. That's right. We value the trust placed in us by our donors, support, and general public, and we feel the best way to continue to earn that trust is to make the association's finances as transparent as possible. And here's the deal. While I do appreciate your transparency, all you're doing is quite literally showing me why I don't trust you in a pie chart. Here we can see in green, most of the revenue recorded by the American Heart Association comes from sources other than corporations. These sources include contributions from individuals, foundations, and estates. Total corporate funding is comprised of unrestricted gifts, special event and program sponsorships, and fees from program-related services. Corporate funding represents approximately 16.6% of the AHA's $1.1 billion in total revenue. And here you can see the pie chart on the bottom, which is truly something, with pharmaceutical and biotech companies and device manufacturers being roughly $40 million. Here you can see in yellow other corporate support, which is $142 million, and then you can see non-corporate revenue sources, $919,815,000. And I just find this so impressive because they're actually revealing the fact that there are institutions outside that of what should be the incentive structure to create a proper health system to be the mainline factors of what are actually pushing the standards that you're advocating for. And when I saw that it was Bill Gates was one of these philanthropic individuals that was invested in the American Heart Association, it all started to click. Here we can see from cardiovascular business, American Heart Association, Bill Gates donates $3.3 million to new research initiative. And I thought this might be a bit ridiculous at first, and I was like, there's no way this is like actually real, that they're accepting money from Bill Gates. I can understand why, but you would think that the tide that this might draw in the mind of some people, it very well could be something that could be too spurious of a correlation for them to actually trust anything that you're saying. But no, it's true. Here we can see from the American Heart Association themselves, new $3.3 million research investment focuses on health tech solutions for brain health and dementia. The American Heart Association, with support from Bill Gates, funds new research center and global data exchange to accelerate scientific advances for optimal brain health. And you know what actually assists in optimal brain health? Optimal metabolic health. But that's not something that they're trying to advocate for in any way, shape, or form. So do you think that they actually really care about the fact of your brain's health and the possibility of dementia overtaking you if they're not willing to talk about things like heavy metals in the bloodstream that could be causing things such as this? No, of course not. Jumping on now, here we see, how did the government get the food pyramid so terribly wrong? And I'll tell you why. It's because they were paid to do so. The food pyramid was doomed from the start, but how did the government get it so wrong in the first place? And like we've already talked about, it's who it is that was paying them to go ahead and do these things, like that of the sugar lobby, claiming that fat is the issue. Jumping on now, here we see from Food Dive, where the dollars go, lobbying a big business for large food and beverage. Isn't that interesting? Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, AB InBev, and 27 other companies spent close to $40 million a year on issues including trade and taxes in an effort to make their voices heard by lawmakers and regulators. And there you have it. Apparently, these massive institutions only lobbying government to get better trade deals and lower taxes. And if you actually believe that, I'd argue you're not seeing the entirety of the picture. Here you see from the Union of Concerned Scientists the equation. Big food companies spend money in hopes of shaping the dietary guidelines for Americans. June 6th, 2019. And then to finish this off, we jump over here to the Union of Concerned Scientists once more at the equation. New dietary guidelines cater to alcohol and soda industries. December 29th, 2020. Isn't that just something? So very clearly, it's not just about making sure we can get better trade deals and lower taxes. It's also about making sure we can control the standards of what is purported to you about your health so that we can make more profit. Of course, in the end, you being nothing more than a dollar sign to these institutions, you need to realize that taking care of your health is one of the most important factors that you can do in your life. You are worth it, you matter, and you are worth every single moment spent trying to make yourself a better and more fortified individual than you were the day prior. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and most importantly, my friends, tell someone you love them. Peace out.